Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. And first we're going to start from Avdiivka, because the most important updates are coming from this territory. The Russian sources and most of the mappers and most of the Russian sources have already confirmed that as a result of clashes on the southern part, the Russians established complete control over the industrial area, and the Russians furthermore managed to clear this territory from the Ukrainians. As we discussed yesterday, a significant number of Ukrainian forces surrendered. A lot of Ukrainian forces were able to step back and to withdraw their position in direction of the central and the south-central part of Avdiivka. Some forces of Ukrainian army are blocked in the residential area by the name of Vinogradniki in the same southern part of Avdiivka, and not just there but also along the Kupiansk river, so along this area as well. Some Ukrainian forces are blocked in Tsarskaya Khota fortification, and these 3 points are the main goals for the Russians during the next phase of the clearing and offensive operation on the south. So obviously the Russians are not going to start these attacks like today or maybe even tomorrow. First they need to regroup, they need to dig in deeper in industrial zone, and then they will start offensive operation, more waves of offensive operation. Furthermore, we can expect Russian activity from the southern part to the eastern part of Avdiivka, and the Russians will try to cut this piece of pie as well and to shorten their positions on the eastern and southern location like of Avdiivka. Now we are moving to the northern part of the stronghold, and we got also a lot of very interesting updates. The Ukrainian forces published the video of FPV drone strikes against the Russian positions in the village by the name of Stepova, which also confirmed the Russian presence in this area. The Russians, as a result of clashes during the previous days, managed to concentrate significant number of forces and infantry, and the most important that as a result of clashes in offensive operation, the Russians somehow managed to redeploy or to begin the process of redeployment of armored vehicles on the Ukrainian side of the railways. On this scene we see the Russian armored personnel carrier, and somehow the Russians have already brought this type of weapon here. Anyway, based on to this footage, we see that the Russians are under very heavy fire and under very heavy attack by the Ukrainian FPV drones. When talking about chemical plant itself, the Russians also continued their offensive and storming operation. If you remember, yesterday we discussed that some Russian sources reported that yesterday's attack in direction of the chemical plant was a little bit unsuccessful from the Russian side, and the Ukrainian sources published the video how they repelled the first waves at least of Russian attacks. On this video we see the Ukrainian Bradley. This video was geolocated. The Ukrainian Bradley was attacking the offensive Russian forces, or maybe the Russian forces who were trying to dig in deeper. We see Ukrainian infantry along the wall in the same area, so we see that there are very heavy clashes, and yet the Russians haven't managed to let's say to develop their offensive operation on the northern flank of Avdiivka, of the chemical plant, and that the clashes on this direction continues. After the Bradley managed to work on this direction, the Ukrainians returned back inside of the chemical plant, and we have another video of the movement of the same Bradley, but from the fire position back inside of the chemical plant, probably to get more ammo, maybe to get more infantry, and after that obviously this Bradley would return back to the combat line. So anyway, we see that the clashes for chemical plant continues, and for now, according to some Russians, of course the Russians have already entered the chemical plant, but we still haven't received even a single geolocated confirmation of such a progress. The Russians continue bombardments of this area with different types of weapon, but the Russians, we haven't received like RBK 500 for the previous night or guided bombs, because probably of the very heavy clashes on the ground. Furthermore, another important update is that according to some Russian sources, the Ukrainians were forced to redeploy 116th Mechanized Brigade to reinforce the Ukrainian positions and forces in Avdiivka. So if it's true, obviously this is another disaster for the Ukrainians, because 116th Mechanized Brigade used to help or attack the Russian positions in Verbovo, Rabotino, Novoprokopovka, and redeployment of these forces means just that the Ukrainians took a decision to stop any progress, any movements of their forces in Bradley Square, and currently they're trying to focus everything they have in the area of Avdiivka. So the battle for this stronghold continues. Obviously, today we're going to receive more updates from this territory. A lot of interesting updates are coming from Novomikhailivka. The Ukrainian sources are saying that the Russians renew their storming and offensive operation on the southern part, and that the clashes, according to some sources, without, of course, video geolocated proofs, are taking place almost on the vicinity on the edge positions of the village. So I'm not saying, but according to these reports, it's very likely that today the Russians will be able to enter the village from the south, or to make reconnaissance in force or in combat, and even to enter the first edge positions of the village. So we'll see. Obviously, today we're going to receive more updates from this territory. Very interesting geolocations and updates are coming from Klishchiivka. Very rare footage we got. It's very difficult to understand what exactly happens on this video, but obviously this video was made in Klishchiivka. We see the snow, which means that the footage is is new. Maybe even was made this morning or yesterday in the evening or something like this. The thing is that this video was made by, it's unknown who was making this video, but this video was published on the Russian channel. If you are able to have access to map, you can turn on the music and sound and increase the volume. You're gonna hear the Russian music, and this video tells us that as a result of clashes, there are very high chances that the Russians managed to force the Ukrainians to step back from Klishchiivka, and from now on Klishchiivka is under Russian control. On this video we can see the church. This is the church. So if we zoom in, we're gonna see that the Russian positions and that the Russian forces managed to enter the central part of the village. So one more time, it's not 100% sure information, but according at least to this geolocation, probably the Russians managed to return control over Klishchiivka completely. So we'll see how the things are going to develop next on this direction. Also, very interesting updates are coming from Kupiansk direction, and you will be surprised, but today the Russian sources or the Ukrainians published the first footage of Abrams, and exactly on the Kupiansk direction. According to the sources, the Ukrainians took a decision to redeploy Abrams armored group exactly to the Kupiansk direction to slow down the Russian progress. Obviously, Kupiansk is a very important city and a very important foothold for the Ukrainians, and they try to use the most modern weapon they have to slow down or even to stop or defeat the Russians. Furthermore, some unconfirmed sources reported that the Russians entered Sinkovka as well, and that Ukrainians are crying that the Russians start digging in dope process inside of the village. When talking about Kislovka-Kotlarovka foothold, we got another road of death road between Stepovo, Novoselka and Ivanovka. On this video we see a few destroyed and damaged Ukrainian armored vehicles along the supply road between these two villages. The Ukrainians used to use this area to redeploy forces from Stepovo, Novoselka to Ivanovka. Most of Ivanovka is in the gray zone, so maybe also we're gonna receive some updates about some Russian progress on this territory. So let's follow Kupiansk, as I understand, because of Abrams on the ground. Very soon we're gonna receive a lot of very interesting updates from this territory. And lots of updates are coming interesting from Krynky area. And first, let's take a look at this video, because this is the first video of such a type from this direction. And what can you see? Since the creation of Krynky frontline, Krynky foothold from the Ukrainian side, this is the first video of evacuation of Ukrainian forces from this bank of the river. The Ukrainians, as you can see, there's like a group of Ukrainians who probably were trying to move and bring some wounded soldiers to the boats. The boats was coming along the river. Everything was synchronized, but the Russians discovered the Ukrainian movement, and as a result of mortar strike, the entire evacuation group was destroyed. So the Ukrainians start destroying or eliminating the foothold, and obviously the day is not not even the days, but maybe even hours of Krynky footholds are numbered. Furthermore, the Russians during the day trying to destroy the Ukrainian boats in this area using the FPV drones with night vision. So we see that the situation for the Ukrainians is getting worse and worse. And of course, the Russians during the previous night made another attempt, another attack all over the entire Ukraine using missiles and Iran drones. The explosions took place in Kiev, Cherkasy. Furthermore, some sources published the footage of Ukrainian airfield, and according to information we have, the Ukrainians were keeping and were holding Patriot systems in this area, and there are two footages, one of the 7th of November, the second on the 25th of November, and if we compare these two footages, we might not find the Patriot systems on the 25th of November. So according to some sources, the Russians, as a result of Iran drone strike, managed to destroy the Ukrainian Patriot systems in Kiev, and obviously this is a total disaster. I'm not saying that this is 100% information, we need to wait more, but maybe today the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation will include this piece of information and tell us about destroyed Patriot as a result of Iran strike. Obviously this is going to be a reputational disaster for this air defense system. One more time, just like to for shorten updates: Abrams on Kupiansk, very high chances of fall of Klishchiivka and returning control under Russian control. Avdiivka collapse, the redeployment of 116th Brigade, and destroying and eliminating of a foothold in Krynky by the Ukrainian forces. And that's it for this short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.